Good morning. Welcome to Exploring Economic Development with MEDC. My name is Meredith Harris, and I am joined this morning by my co-host, Jill Morin.
Hello.
Good morning.
It's a Wednesday, which means we are doing our favorite podcast ever.
Our only podcast.
The only podcast you want to listen to if you're in
Marlborough.
MetroWest area.
Massachusetts.
Or interested
beyond.
in economic development.
Exactly.
Or you're a big fan of Meredith and myself and
That's
our
right.
guest that we bring in.
I'm really happy to see you today because it's been like 2 months since we've done this. It feels like forever when we skip a month.
Right.
Yep.
So we decided summertime.
Let's relax a little bit.
Let's take July off. So we
I also think it was like July 1st.
It was like
July 4th week.
I think it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
We took a break.
And
the last episode before that was our special episode that we do quarterly called Inside the Industry.
It was a great episode.
Yeah.
We had Louis Fernandez from MWRTA's Barbecue and Christy from the Entrepreneur Innovation Center at Framingham State University. They were awesome.
Yeah.
We had so much fun.
You've got to check it out, especially if you're I don't know,
Looking to start a business.
If you're looking to start a business, if you're a student that's kind of interested in entrepreneurship, if you're close to Framingham and you want to take advantage of some of these opportunities, as a semi-entrepreneur myself, I was like,
it's
was
super
this
cool.
program? Where was this information? Please check it out. Share it with anyone that's on their journey because there's so many resources in your backyard,
right?
At low or no costs,
right? And also Laboretta's. Check out Laboretta's because Louis. Hearing him talk about his strategy behind like just everything, the whole restaurant is just super cool.
Yeah, his design, and so we're also going to be sharing some short clips from that. So check those out. Right now, we're streaming to Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn,
and on our website,
MarlboroughEDC.com.
That's right.
Check it out. Yeah.
So without further ado,
we'll
stop talking about the past. Let's get into today's episode. So we are very excited. We have, I think, this is the one of 3 returning guests that we've had.
Yeah.
So thank you for being here with us. But we have returning guest Jason Palitsch from the 495 MetroWest Partnership joining us this morning. So Jason, thank you for being with us today.
This is also my favorite podcast. So thank you for having me.
That's so nice of
I'm
you.
pleased to say that today involves patronizing some Marlborough businesses. So before I left my office to come here this morning, I did put in my online order for my favorite sandwich at Vin Bin.
Awesome.
I can't pick it up until 11:30, so I'll be hanging around Marlborough for a little bit while,
So you can go to
after you're done. But I will be getting that sandwich. I'm very excited.
I love it. You must be in economic development or something because you know all the good plugs and all the good things to say, right?
Must be.
You must be.
And if your sandwich happens to have bacon in it, thank you, because if you didn't know, our
Vin Bin
office
is
is
right
above the Vin Bin. So
it's the Shoemaker, which is
while-
chicken salad, but I believe there's a little pancetta in it. It's delightful.
Ooh.
I'm not entirely sure what's in it, but it's delightful.
It's
I highly
delightful.
recommend.
That's Linda's favorite. It's a good one. We are getting off track.
It's good.
I don't know. I feel like we're right on track to supporting businesses here in Marlborough, Massachusetts, the thriving heart of the 495 MetroWest region.
I think where Jill is going to is that when they cook the bacon, it like permeates through the floor. And we can smell the bacon. So like right around 11 o'clock every day, we're all like, is it lunchtime yet? It smells so good up here. But anyways, so with all that being said, Jason, welcome. Thank you for joining us. Because we've had you on before, people can learn about the 495 partnership by watching the first episode.
Yep.
But can anybody who didn't watch that episode, can you give us kind of a quick overview? Who are you guys? What do you do? Obviously, you do regional economic development, but what does that mean?
Certainly. The 495 MetroWest Partnership's mission is to advance the 495 MetroWest region as an advantageous location for people, businesses, and communities.
Mm-hmm.
We're, as you mentioned, an economic development organization. We're a public-private partnership. So you think of economic development organization, you tend to think of business group. Well, businesses are an incredibly important stakeholder of ours, but we're actually an alliance of different stakeholders. We're an alliance of businesses, municipal governments, regional transit authorities, local chambers of commerce, organizations like MEDC, environmental organizations, developers, higher education institutions, folks you don't always find sitting around the same table, sitting around our table where the common interest is advancing the 495 MetroWest region.
Yeah.
So I think everybody always starts off with some version of the same question. And
Right.
once we get past what is the partnership, which is how do you define 495 MetroWest? And I think that you might have a graphic of our map ready to go, but I like to describe it as a big diamond to the west of Boston. So we define the region as 36 cities and towns.
Yep.
The roughly shaped like a diamond, the northernmost point of which is Westford, Massachusetts. It comes down to the west as far as Shrewsbury and Grafton, all the way down south to Foxborough, Rentham, and Plainville. And then our eastern frontier is Natick and Wayland. It's about a tenth of the state's population.
Wow.
And these are 36 cities and towns that have a lot in common with one another, but otherwise split up in any jurisdictional boundary. And that's sort of why the partnership exists in the first place.
Well, and I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think in the past it was like, how do we get together to have one jointed voice so that we can advocate for different things that are important to this, group of folks in this area of the Commonwealth, correct?
Absolutely. And, it's funny, a few years back, State Rep Kate Hogan, who represents a couple of our communities, launched a program called the Suburban Edge Community Commission. And the word edge, it was a policy study of our region's communities, and the word edge was kind of key there because our cities and towns are on the edge of regions. They're on the western edge of Metro Boston. Some of our towns are on the edge of central Massachusetts.
Yeah.
And being on the edge of things means sometimes you're not paid attention to.
You're forgotten.
To your point, one of the real purposes of the partnership was to make sure these communities, which have a lot in common, which sink or swim together, have a cohesive voice advocating for
and
their
a loud
needs.
voice.
Yes.
Yeah, and you guys do a really good job at that, at advocating at the state level. And what do they say? Was you're better together, right? And so if everybody's coming together and the state legislators are hearing from a large 36 cities and towns group of people, it holds a lot of weight.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And, we could not do what we do without the support of local economic development partners on the ground. MEDC is a great part of our team. Marlborough is, of course, the second largest community in our service area by population. Marlborough is a huge economic engine for this region. And so, I'm just really excited to continue to work with you guys.
Yeah. That's not on accident. That's by design, right, Jill? It is.
Of course.
So, all right, I want to talk to you, I think, really important transportation, 490, the I-90, 290 projects. Do we want to jump right into that, or do we want to
let's
open the box?
The 495 MetroWest Partnership focuses on a couple, just to set the table for folks. We focus on a couple of issues. We're a small organization, and it's typically only 2 full-time staff, so we have to be very strategic, very focused. And we tend to focus on those areas, not only where a lot of our stakeholders have common interests, but where it really doesn't make sense for our stakeholders to go it alone in their advocacy. And one of those issues is transportation.
What are some of the other ones?
Housing, water resources, workforce development, energy, key among them. But transportation has always kind of come been first among equals because transportation projects are extremely expensive.
Right.
They take many, many years of planning and advocacy to happen. And it really, unless you're talking about a strictly local roadway issue, typically a transportation project impacts multiple communities.
And a lot of people.
Yep.
Right.
Exactly. And for us, our transportation work comes in 3 buckets: roadway projects, commuter rail, and regional transit authorities. Fun fact, none of our 36 cities and towns are served by MBTA bus or subway. So when we talk about public transportation, we're not talking about the MBTA trains. We're not talking about the buses from the MBTA system. We're talking about our regional transit authorities. We're talking about the 3 commuter rail lines that serve our region and roadway projects. And it's funny because you'd ask, what's been our number one sort of roadway project in the last 10 or 15 years.
Yeah.
It is the redoing the interchange of the Massachusetts Turnpike and 495, which is currently underway. Some folks know that interchange had been operationally unsafe, weird weaving patterns that had to do with the old toll plaza.
I was just going to say why, because you don't even remember it when you get off of that exit, but it's because the tolls were there, right?
And now instead of having a toll plaza, which it's great that we've obviously moved to electronic tolling, but now you're weaving across competing traffic.
It's really weird.
In addition to being a safety issue, there's a huge economic cost. Just about all truck freight coming into New England that isn't going into the city itself is passing through that interchange. So it's a safety issue that's an economic cost. So that project is underway, over $400 million. It's going to be one of the largest roadway projects in state history. Over $400 million.
Okay.
It's going to
no big deal.
Work just started a couple months ago. And, again, we've been fighting for it for over a decade. And I'm already getting asked by people, when's it going to be done? Spoiler alert.
Well, it's funny when you screw with somebody's commute, or like all of a sudden you can't get to work on time, or you can't find somewhere to park, or like people get loud because it's inconvenience, right?
I should note, in fairness to the Mass DOT project team who are doing great work, traffic is flowing in all directions. It's the presence of equipment and signage. People want to know. They get curious. 2027 is when it'll be done. A little while. But even though that by scale is one of the largest roadway infrastructure projects in state history, it is not the one that I am asked about the most in the course of doing my job.
What is that, Jason? What is it?
The one that I am asked about the most, which this year will cost the taxpayer just about $6 million, which is an incredibly efficient use of taxpayer
way
dollars.
Less than $400 million
is the ramp connecting 495 southbound in Marlborough near the Hudson line to 290 westbound.
All right, so this truly impacts our viewers, people in Marlborough, employers in Marlborough, employees in Marlborough, people coming in and out all the time, shoppers at the mall. I mean, so this has a real impact on our community.
Everybody has sat in a long line of cars at one point or another waiting to connect from 495 south.
It never goes away. Am I wrong? I mean,
I want to hear more.
You can go on 495 any day of the week, any time, and there are cars waiting to get onto 290.
Yeah. So I bring very exciting news. Let me tell you what's going to happen. And I should clarify.
Santa.
Yes, a Mass DOT Santa.
In August.
What on the surface looks like a very simple project actually was a two-phased project. The first phase was completed in 2019.
Okay.
Before the pandemic, that involved elongating the breakdown lane, so there was a little bit more space there.
Okay. Yep.
So a lot of the complex work was actually done pre-pandemic. The pandemic put things on hold. But what is currently where preliminary work is underway, and what will be largely completed by the end of this construction season, meaning by the late fall, that ramp will go from one lane to 2 lanes.
Wow.
We will double the capacity of that ramp.
That's huge.
It is likely
Jill,
that...
are you excited?
I drive back and forth to Marlborough and Clinton all the time, and I hit this underpass where I can see if the cars are not moving the right speed, then I go through Hudson.
Yeah.
I'm constant. Yeah. Okay. No,
I bring no greater joy to people's lives than when I explain what this project is. But the construction will likely be completed by the end of the fall. It's likely that the final layer of pavement, resurfacing, redoing the layout is probably going to be next spring. But by the end of the fall, it's going to be a 2-lane ramp, which again, 1 lane to 2, double the capacity. It's pretty significant.
Yeah.
And of course, one of the things, and we all know, we all think about we're sitting in our car. Nobody likes to be sitting in traffic. We all think about it from that way. But
unless you're listening to a podcast called Exploring Economic Development with MEDC
podcast.
That's immediately where I go.
Sorry, keep going.
But I mean, it's still kind of a lesser experience because they're not watching the video. I just want those folks to know if they were to listen elsewhere, they could get the visual. But
that's right.
When you look at commuting patterns in Marlborough, because one of the things that we do with the partnership is every year we put out basic economic and demographic profiles of each of our 36 cities and towns.
I always find those to be super helpful. There's a lot of information on them. I think, Jill, did we have a graphic of what those look like?
Say that again.
The economic profile.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah, they're really cool and they're really helpful. It's a lot of good information. You guys put out a lot of good data reports and things that are really useful in our team. There it is. It's really a good one.
There you go. There's Marlborough's, and you can get these on our website. You go under information and resources, reports and data. You can click a link for each of our 36 cities and towns, but it's got information on demographic characteristics, educational attainment levels, and fun fact, Marlborough's population grew 9% over the course of the last decennial census. The state's population grew 7.4%, so Marlborough's growth continues to outstrip the Commonwealth's growth. Educational attainment levels, housing stock. One of the things that we do, though, we look at commuting patterns. Where do your workers in Marlborough commute from? Where do they commute to? So just, some interesting stats for folks who might be interested. There's about 1,200 people who both live and work in Marlborough. There's about 9,000 people who live elsewhere, come into Marlborough, and there's about 11,000 who live in Marlborough and are employed elsewhere. Marlborough tops both of its commuter groups. So the number one source of workers for Marlborough is Marlborough. The number one destination of Marlborough workers is Marlborough. But for where your workers come from, the runner-up is Worcester. A lot of people who work in Marlborough, who work in the area, live in Worcester, live in the central Massachusetts region. And so that traffic on 495 to 290, that's part of typical, the typical commuting pattern for a lot of people.
Yeah. Interesting. All right. So we used to say pre-pandemic that it was like 25,000 people come into Marlborough every day, 25,000 go out of Marlborough every day. So that's interesting to see kind of the updated stats and what it looks like.
And we know that the pandemic has played with those numbers quite a bit.
Sure, of course, of course. Yeah, especially with people that, go to work from home model, things like that.
Yeah.
Here, kind of a random question for you, but are you seeing in the region, are a lot of folks back to commuting, or are people still kind of working from home? Is it more of a hybrid? We see it as kind of a hybrid here in Marlborough, where a lot of the companies that we were worried when the pandemic ended that they were going to be work from home permanently, whereas that's not really the case. And a lot of folks that we thought were going to downsize their buildings because of that didn't end up doing that, because they need to keep the buildings, because if they wanted to have everybody into the space at one time, you need to have that big of a space to host everybody. Is that kind of the case throughout the region? Is everybody else following similar patterns?
Yeah, what we're seeing is that folks are generally back to some form of commute, but that commute does not look like what that commute used to look like
before.
So there are obviously folks in a lot of professions who have to report to work every day, depending on your field. But for folks where work remotely is an option, we tend to see folks doing that 1 or 2 days per week.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of focus on Mondays and Fridays with that. And what that means is traffic patterns for Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday
are totally different.
Well, the middle of the week tends to look a lot like it did before the pandemic. With a lot of people
Thursday's
on
the new Friday, right? Like everybody's heading north, and and then Fridays are just kind of a ghost town, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But what we're also seeing too is with people working remotely, we're seeing a lot more traffic in our downtowns and our town centers than you would typically see during a weekday.
Yeah.
Because you have a lot of folks who might maybe used to commute elsewhere, and now it's like, well, I'm going to go to the coffee shop or the sandwich place in my own community now.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So we have definitely seen a shift in commuting patterns throughout the region. But one of the interesting things about 495 MetroWest, which most of our communities are suburban communities, primarily stereotypical bedroom communities.
Yep.
You think of the typical commuting pattern for a suburban region as, the people sleep here and then they commute into the central city for work. 495 MetroWest as a region is a net importer of labor. There's more people coming into the region than going out in the course of day. And a huge source of workers for the region is Worcester and central Massachusetts.
Mm-hmm.
And again, that gets right back to the need to regionalize our thinking about transportation. But we've got more people coming into this region every day to work than going out. Post-pandemic, we think that's holding.
Well, so that's one of the reasons why we did our commuter shuttle. So Marlborough is running a shuttle bus that goes 3 trips in the morning, 3 trips in the evening, going from our office park. We pick up at what's called it's Atlantic Management's property. The name is actually Marlborough Hills. That's what it's called, Marlborough Hills on Forest Street, where we pick up a group of folks there. We go over to Apex, pick up a group of folks there, and go all the way over to the Southborough train station, drop people off that might be commuting into Boston or Worcester, but then also picking folks up that are coming in from Worcester and Boston. And it kind of works out where there's trains that are coming in at the same time. So we're able to get folks from both Boston and Worcester and bring them to work in Marlborough. So that's exactly why we're doing that, because we looked at it and we said, okay, we could run a shuttle bus from Boston, but a lot of people are coming from Worcester. So how do we grab people from both ends? And that's kind of how we came up with the idea.
And you're participating in something that we discuss a lot in the context of regional transit authorities. And I mentioned, when we have our 3 buckets for transportation, roadways, RTAs, commuter rail, one of the things that's been a real challenge for our regional transit authorities is just the change in commuting patterns.
Mm-hmm.
They're not the traditional commuting patterns that people used to see. If you look at a map, so our 36 community region is served by 5 different regional transit authorities.
It's kind of crazy, isn't it?
It is a little bit crazy, of which only the MetroWest Regional Transit Authority is actually headquartered in our area. Its hub is, of course, in Framingham. And one of the things about RTAs, if you look at their service maps, it's the old what's called the hub and spoke model. You have a central city, Lowell, Worcester, Framingham, and there's fixed route bus service designed to take people in and out of the surrounding towns into the central city, sort of on old sort of fixed commuting patterns, or where a major employer, maybe like a hospital or another large employer, has a fixed schedule with a lot of folks who might use the system. But the thing is, that just doesn't reflect how people commute anymore.
Right.
And we struggle with the fact it's very difficult to get from one end of our region to another. And I like to sort of highlight, and Marlborough's kind of in the middle of this, but the Milford to Hudson commute. So both of these communities are nominally served by MWRTA. And I want to quick pause. MWRTA is a wonderful organization. They do great work.
Sure.
A fantastic new leader in Jim Nee, who's doing a lot of forward thinking about how can we sort of reconfigure, especially looking at Route 85 as sort of a north-south linkage where a new service is needed. And the partnership is really big on supporting that. But so, you look at Milford, Massachusetts, which of all of our communities is a little bit more affordable to live in.
Sure.
Marlborough and Hudson, huge employers here, growing businesses here. The business community in Marlborough and Hudson has always been strong and continues to be so. So you live in Milford, get a job in Hudson, you want to take public transportation. Can you do it? You think the answer is no. Technically, you could. You could take a bus from Milford into downtown Framingham. You could switch buses. You could take that bus into Marlborough, and then depending on the day, you could get a shuttle where you're probably not going to be within walking distance of your employer.
Okay, that's exhausting.
Just to think about. Just to think.
I know.
So,
I've got the map back up, and I'm going. Okay.
So you'd have to go from Milford to Framingham
and
to Marlborough
as a drive,
to Hudson.
you could do that that would be a relatively short commute. But for somebody who's dependent on public transportation, that's just not an option. So MWRTA is exploring. And again, Route 85 is something they're eyeing as sort of a missing north-south connection. But you've got these sort of dated ways of doing things, and you can't get from one end of our region to another. And for us, that's sort of, as we're kind of updating post-pandemic our vision for what does improved RTA service look like. It's the ability to get you from point A to point B through public transportation in a way that is safe, reliable, and affordable.
And convenient.
And is actually viable.
Right. Well, and I think I've learned, too, over the last year or two that, like, one of the biggest issues is that they have different systems set up where, like, if you pay at WRTA, it's a completely different system than the MWRTA versus the WRTA. So, like, it's not one Charlie card that could get you from, on both buses.
And
They're
the commuter rail is a
different.
part of that too, because the commuter rail is a different system. And then even the parking, because parking facilities at commuter rail stations are usually privately owned. And so it's one app to park, it's one app to get on. And that sort of seamless user experience is also part of our vision, both for RTAs and for commuter rail.
Oh, it's a great idea. And that's exciting to hear that you guys are thinking about that, because in theory, you would think that you could get a Charlie card and use that for public transportation all over the state of Massachusetts, but that's not the case right now. So
it's not the world we live in right now,
but
it's
about it.
Absolutely part of our vision for the future.
Yeah, that's awesome.
But we are going to get 2 lanes.
On 290.
Yes, you are. You're going to get 2 lanes by the end of the fall.
Perfect.
Surfaced in the spring, but we're very excited about that.
I remember years ago, you might not have been here. I think it was before your time too, Jason. But there was like this conversation early on when I first started MEDC about like monorails and like pods that were going to be coming through. Do you remember that?
Wasn't there like some?
It was some group, and they were talking about like literally a
dusty
monorail
box in our office in Westboro. The partnership is about 20 years old as an organization, but there's a conceptual study from about 20 years ago, the 495 monorail. I don't know who here is a fan of The Simpsons, but I always think of the monorail song.
Yeah. Could you sing?
I'm gonna. We
it.
have to negotiate a licensing fee for me to use my golden singing
copyright.
voice on the radio. Yeah, I'm sorry. You're not.
Well.
I haven't quite been compensated. I'm kidding. I'm the worst singer in the world. You would pay to get me to stop singing. But that was a conversation a while ago, and frankly, thank goodness we didn't.
Yeah.
Because if you look at what was identified as hubs, then it wouldn't reflect the change in commuting patterns over 2 decades.
I just think it's hysterical that was like, actual conversations you're having.
Like the Jetsons.
Hey, why not? Why not? All right. Anyways, before we get too far gone, what are some other projects that you guys have going on? What are other things, in right now that you guys are advocating for? I know you do the State House Day. You guys are really in tune with what's going on Beacon Hill. What else do you got going on?
Let me just pause to say too, one of the things that makes the partnership unique. So we do, in addition to our regular economic development work, we do a lot of economic development work through advocacy. It's not just, helping business A come to location X. It's what is holistically necessary to support economic growth. You need good transportation infrastructure. You need adequate water and sewer infrastructure, which is a huge challenge in New England, especially with life sciences, where there's different water usage than traditional or classic office space. There need to be affordable places for people to live. And I started this job a couple weeks before the pandemic.
Good for you. That's exciting, huh?
Yeah, yes. And it was quite something. I sort of feel like this past year has been like my first real year, because the first few years it was
underwater.
It was pandemic response all the time.
Yeah.
But in the weeks before the pandemic, if you asked me what the number one economic threat to the region was, I would have easily said transportation. We still have many transportation problems, as we've discussed, but I will tell you now, it is housing.
Yeah.
The reason that employers want to be in our region is because of the people. There are people here to hire. We have an extremely well-educated population. Commercial and industrial real estate is eminently more affordable in our region than it is inside of 128.
Yeah.
But you still have all of the workforce advantages. Our region the population in 495 MetroWest is more educated than the state's population. And Massachusetts is an extremely well-educated state. But if people can't afford to be here, that is going to be a significant threat to our continued business growth. So housing is one. So, in terms of other things we're working on, we have a housing, we do a lot of our policy work in committees. We've got a housing committee that's sort of getting itself off the ground, trying to take, doing early steps towards identifying a regional approach to creating more affordable and workforce housing, which, is one of those things that a lot of stakeholders on the upper levels absolutely say is necessary, but then when the rubber starts meeting the road and you're talking about actually creating housing units, you encounter a lot of challenges. So,
well, and I think it's tough too at the municipal level, because you look at like the state's most recent, the MBTA 3A compliance and all these different things, and sure, absolutely more housing is needed in Massachusetts, but I think we've struggled at the local level with. In Marlborough in particular, we've done a lot of production over the last 10 to 12 years. And, you look at some of the surrounding communities that maybe haven't done as much or, done their fair share, I guess you can say. So I think people struggle, with that. So it's great to have a group like yours that's doing some of that advocacy, talking to the legislators, talking through some of those things, because a lot of times it feels like the boots on the ground. It's hard to get some of that information up to where it needs to be.
And you just reminded me, I obviously started going down a tangent. You reminded me of an important point that I was going to make a minute ago, which is about our region's legislative delegation, who we have great working relationships with. So a lot of organizations that do advocacy work, you sit in a room, you come up with what your policy is, and then you start advocating to legislators. And we both worked in the State House in our past lives, and we've been on the receiving end of emails, please do X or the sky will fall in.
Yeah.
We have our legislative delegation around the table at the 495 MetroWest Partnership. We have them at our they're not voting members. We have them at our board meetings.
Right.
We make a point of having members of the legislative delegation participate in the conversation about what the region needs, so that members of our delegation, when they advocate for the region, they're obviously they're extremely well informed on these issues, but it's not just something that somebody threw at them. It's a conversation that they're actively participating in.
And they don't know what they don't know either, right? So if it's on us to make sure that we're sending that message, upwards, and making sure that we voice our opinions and we're heard. And so we appreciate you guys helping us out with that, the ability to be able to get that message across. But it's a tough one. The housing is a tough one, for sure.
It is. Other things we're working on. So, water infrastructure. We're big supporters of always increasing the investment in the state's state revolving fund, the Clean Water Trust, and not to take your listeners down, a rabbit hole of the specifics of state programs and financing mechanisms. But to make a long story short, to make the long story maybe a touch more exciting, New England has very, very old water infrastructure. Our water and sewer infrastructure is in some cases more than a century old. It is very, very expensive to fix water infrastructure. Some of our communities have capacity issues in terms of where their water comes from. Some of our communities have sewer capacity issues. Some of our communities don't have sewer. We have some communities where everybody is on septic. We have communities where everyone, is getting their water from wells. And to change this or to increase capacity on either front is extremely expensive. Cities and towns and water districts essentially can't do it alone unless they were to just pass massively unsustainable rate increases onto customers.
Right.
So the Commonwealth's assistance is absolutely essential. So we're always advocating, please continue to invest more and more in the Clean Water Trust, which is a mechanism that the state uses to provide, financing to help cities and towns do this.
We find, just to add to that, so we're very fortunate in Marlborough that we do have a sewer system, and it helps us to attract a lot of times, surrounding communities say, how do you guys get so much life sciences and the manufacturing? And they're big water users. And so things like sewer are really important to them. And so that's been really helpful to us in Marlborough from a city's perspective of being able to attract some of those higher users, the Modernas of the world, the GEs, the Quest Diagnostics, Cytiva, those folks. So you're spot on. It's hugely important to those industries.
And as a lot of cities and towns are evaluating their readiness, or their readiness is being evaluated by outside entities as to how ready are you for a big life sciences or a biotech user, that
can make or break it.
A huge part of the conversation. And unfortunately, if you find yourself on the wrong end of that stick, quick. It's not a quick fix. It's not a cheap fix.
Right.
So, from making sure we raise that issue up at the regional level has always been very important for the 405 MetroWest Partnership.
For sure.
Something else I would just highlight that we're working on, I touch a little bit on housing and water. Workforce development.
Yep.
We have some great folks who work in the state's workforce development system who we work very closely with, who MEDC I know works very closely with. The fact of the matter is the state's workforce development system is not ready to meet the moment, and there's recognition of that from the administration. There's a recognition of that for the folks on the ground. The state's workforce development system is a fantastic resource to get folks retrained, to help somebody who is without income looking for income. But what we've been seeing in the past year and a half, 2 years, is industries that are located in Massachusetts, because of the people they can hire, are for the first time struggling to hire.
It's everybody too.
Absolutely. And it's industries that don't typically engage with the state's workforce hiring system. So making sure we're having, getting all of our stakeholders around the same table to focus on that need as well, because it's not just, helping someone who's unemployed gain employment, or it's not just helping somebody find more gainful employment.
Right.
It's industries that have never struggled to hire before are finding it impossible to fill positions. And we need to make sure we're meeting that need. Otherwise, they're going to start looking elsewhere. So
we're trying to not to get people too excited, but we're actually like in the can for one of our future episodes. We're going to be talking about apprenticeship because we just did a webinar with Greg Bunn and
Greg
Dennis
Bunn
Collins.
is the best guest to talk about that.
Yeah. And so we're trying to come up with, to your point, unique ways to partner the schools to the business community and, folks, a lot of, not just students, but there's a lot of other populations out there that are looking to either get back into the workforce or to change career, whatever it is. But that's going to be an upcoming episode that we're excited. We're kind of working on that right now.
Not to preview that, but just to give an extra plug for any of our business leaders who might be listening. And Meredith, I know you know this from your conversations with Greg, but one of the challenges that the state's workforce system has, we have our regional mass hire, which is led and staffed by wonderful people who, are doing incredible work. They've got some funding available for apprenticeship program, but the thing is, there has to be a critical mass because they've got to, find an outside provider to come in and do the training. It's a contract, and where a company, a small business might say, I'd really be interested in having 1 or 2 apprentices. That might not by itself be enough to float a class, but we've got our staff at Mass Hire who are like, where can we find critical mass to do this?
Yeah.
And if you're listening out there and you're thinking, I would really benefit from 1 or 2 apprentices, I don't think I could float a whole class. Call Meredith,
reach out,
call me, call Mass Hire, because there are conversations going about where can we make that critical mass.
Yeah, we got to get people together. Yeah, it's great. We're bumping up against time.
I can't believe that.
Can you believe that? I know
cannot.
It happens. So did you have anything else you wanted to, I think you went through all of your advocacy, right?
I could keep going, but I'm going to stop.
I'm going to stop you. All right. I just want to make sure I didn't interrupt you there. But we want to talk to you about probably one of the most exciting things that we've done together in collaboration, but our redo grants. So if anybody is not familiar with the redo grants, that is what brought you the pop-up shops in downtown Marlborough. So thank you to your organization for working with us to secure that grant. Can you tell us, I don't want to steal the thunder, but can you tell us a little bit about the redo grant opportunity, how we ended up, kind of developing the pop-up shops from the redo grant?
Is that me?
Oh, it is.
That's you.
Oh no!
Did you want me to zoom in?
No. You zoom out. That's fine. But actually, before I explain, I will put you on the spot, Meredith, because I'm sure all your listeners must know. But why don't we start with the excited piece? Tell folks what is actually there. I'll talk in a minute about how we got
there.
Tell folks what's there and who's there.
I love that you just flipped the script on me. That was great. I love that. So the downtown pop-up shop program is probably one of the most exciting things we've done at MEDC for a really long time. So downtown, if anybody has not been down to the pop-up shops, you need to get down and check it out. It's in between Shin's Garden and Crown Fried Chicken, right outside of Lost Shoe and the dental office right there. But you have 3 sheds, and you've probably seen the sheds because there's a beautiful butterfly on one side. There's another scene, kind of beautiful spring flowers on the other, and our tagline on the back, Live, Work, Play, which was all done by a local artist. But it's really pop-up temporary retail space for, folks that are looking to test the downtown market, come in with some of their products that they're making, selling by. We've had candle makers, jewelry makers. We've got a vintage curator that's down there. All kinds of really cool authors, artists, just different things that are going in every single week. And it changes and it rotates every week. It's open from Thursday 4 to 8, Friday 4 to 8, 9 to 5 on Saturday and Sunday. And again, every weekend, and it's different folks. We've got one shed that's been the same they've been sharing a shed for the entire season. I think they're taking a break for September. They're coming back in October, but really kind of a cool, thing going on down there. We did a Christmas in July 2 weeks ago to try and, really promote and get people to the area. So much fun. We had a face painter that came down to join us and live music. It was really kind of cool. And Santa, he wasn't the Mass DOT Santa, but he was more like a Harley cool kind of fun Santa. We had a lot of fun. So anyways, that's kind of the skinny on the pop-up shop. So it's a temporary retail space.
So obviously the idea for this was kicking around here at MEDC for a while.
Long time.
So how did this turn into a reality? So, the 495 MetroWest Partnership, we're a relatively small organization. Most of our revenue comes from private businesses that choose to invest in us to support the work we do. We do every year compete for a competitive state grant called REDO. It's an acronym, Regional Economic Development Organization. And the application process is in the fall. And what happened last year was relatively late in the game, we learned that we would have the opportunity to attach quick turnaround, one-time economic development projects that either we or outside entities we work with wanted to do. And so what we always do when opportunities like that come along is we give the chance to our 36 cities and towns. And now the thing is, unfortunately, most are not in a position to take advantage of it because it's like, hey, I need all of your application materials in just a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Whatever project you're going to do is going to have to be done by the end of the fiscal year.
Right.
It's not going to be recurring, so you can't hire anybody on it. Here's a battery of things you can't do because, of course,
lots of requirements
in the Commonwealth, but there's a list of things you can't do that people would think to. And so most of our communities were not in a position to take advantage of it. At the end of the day, we were able to receive awards for 3 of our communities. And all of them
were all
for
pop-ups,
pop-ups.
right?
Acton and Westboro actually did a joint application together. They're sharing funding for a consultant. But MEDC, and this is where, for Marlborough residents who are listening, the value of MEDC to your community, MEDC was boom, we're going to put in for
Get
this.
it done.
You change projects midstream.
I was going to say that.
But regardless, you're right off the bat. MEDC was like, no, we're going to take advantage of this opportunity. And most communities don't have the staffing or the focus on economic development to be able to do that. So your application went in. It was very well received. Of the applications we submitted, it was the only one that was an unqualified yes. Other applications got less money than they asked for. Yours was just yes. What you asked for was funded. So that is
and look at it.
It's gorgeous.
So, I'm so proud of it. And kudos I have to shout out to Lindsay because Lindsay, this is her baby. Because it was such a cool event. But honestly, the coordination of this thing is huge. Every week we've got new people coming. So I do have to give a shout out to Lindsay Jowrick at MEDC. Well deserved. Absolutely. I mean, just the management of the sheds. We've got.
And Lindsay was the one who, when I put that email, Lindsay said, we're in. We're going to do something.
We're going to figure, and I think it was more like, we're going to do something. We don't actually know what we're doing yet. And then we had a whole nother idea, which I don't remember at this point what it was. And I think it was the mayor at the very last second said, and for years he's been saying to me, we need to get retail space. How do we get the Etsy's of the world, the people that are doing these things that want to be downtown, find a place for them. He kept saying, find a place for them. So when we put this opportunity in front, and he said, no, let's do it. Let's build let's build sheds. It went from, we were originally going to do pods. It has been so much fun, but it's a lot of coordination. It's a lot of, things that go into it. I mean, one in particular, we're literally building shelves. You come in as a vendor, and there's shelving available for you. There's, everything you need.
Customizable.
Exactly. Yeah. There's fans, there's electricity, there's Wi-Fi. It's really quite an impressive project downtown.
Yeah. It is. It is. It really, really was a wonderful day.
Did you do your butterfly photo?
I don't even remember. Am I in this one?
Well,
that's the mayor. That's
the mayor. No, but you said you have an hour between getting your sandwich, so you've got plenty of time to go take your butterfly picture.
Only 30 minutes. Only 30 minutes.
Maybe. Marlborough pops up. So we have a question from a viewer.
Well, we did have a comment from President Austin. Thank you for joining us today.
Yes, she did.
President Austin said Lindsay did a great job coordinating the pop-ups.
It's an unbelievable project.
She absolutely did.
Yeah.
It is really, really a credit to downtown Marlborough because it's multiple businesses. It's visually interesting, and it's really placemaking in the traditional. You leave your car somewhere, get out of your car, walk around. Go to your coffee shop. Go get your sandwich. Go have your dinner because you're having a restaurant in your downtown area in the near future.
The farmers market. We have farmers market on Saturday. It's been so awesome.
But while you're there, stop in and check out these businesses that, if not for this opportunity, might not get the chance to test out their concept in brick and mortar. And for those who, a lot of people hear the term pop-up, and just on a conceptual level, for those who don't know what it is, you have a lot of small businesses that have great ideas,
Right.
led by really talented people. But the question as to would I survive if I opened in brick and mortar, sometimes people can't access financing. Sometimes people don't want to risk their whole lives to open a business. And what a pop-up shop does is it allows a small business to test their concept with foot traffic. And it's just a wonderful opportunity. It's great for the downtown, and it's wonderful for the businesses that get to go there.
Right. And we have a brand new, you can see my passion with this project, but we have a brand new sign too that was done by the DPW, but also John Mitten down at DPW is the welder who did all the beautiful signage for the museum and the streets. He does incredible work, and he built this beautiful sign holder. So it's just all in all an incredible thing. So we thank you guys for giving us the opportunity to bring it to life and working with us.
We got the check, but you guys did the work.
Not hating us for completely switching. I'll never forget Jason saying to me and Lindsay, like, "Are you kidding me?"
You haven't actually told this part of the story. You've alluded to it. You tiptoed up to it, but maybe I'll tell it.
Please.
They had our communities that wanted to participate in this had a hard deadline to get their application materials into me because we had to submit a massive application to the state. And Marlborough decided to change its project
like an hour before, I think.
I think it was 24 hours. It was a day of turnaround time. But I remember my initial reaction was less than enthusiastic,
but we get it done.
But remembering who I'm talking to, because this is MEDC after, I was like, okay, if you feel that you can get me what you need to get me
by tomorrow.
I think it was 4:00 on a Friday.
We did it though.
Everything came in, and again, not only did you of everything that we sent in, it was the only unqualified yes.
I love it.
So good work.
Thank you.
We do have a couple more comments I want to make sure we pull on the screen. And thank you for those of you who are joining us live. So much excitement around these pop-up shops.
I love it.
Luis DaCosta, thank you for joining us. He said that that's a great case study for that kind of public beneficial use of grants.
Absolutely.
And we did want to make sure that as a team, we gave a huge shout out to the Marlborough Department of Public Works.
Absolutely.
Outstanding.
We actually, it's become a joke in the office because Lindsay just like texts Ted or Dan and they're like, all right, what do you need now? Or this is the last thing.
So just for the residents listening, anytime you want a pothole addressed in your neighborhood,
call
just
Lindsay.
Text Meredith. No, just text Meredith or dump it on Lindsay. Yeah.
No, we're not. We've been given strict orders, like leave them alone at this point. So we're going to try. We're going to try. It's all good.
We also want to make sure that we give a shout out to UMass Memorial Hospital.
Love it. Thank you for joining us.
I think they've been with us the whole stream. They did make a comment earlier on that it said, hopefully, when you were talking about being excited to be here in the community and frequenting our places.
Shops.
Thank you. They did say, hopefully you won't need any services today at Marlborough Hospital, but if you do, they're here for you.
I would say I got a wonderful tour of Marlborough Hospital a few months ago, and Marlborough Hospital is a fantastic supporter of the 485 MetroWest Partnership, and I think it's great when our healthcare facilities are, in addition to all of the work that they do as healthcare facilities, and of course, post-pandemic, we all know what that means, in Marlborough, to see Marlborough Hospital actually participating in the economic life of the community. Because here in Massachusetts, our healthcare facilities are economic engines. It's not just the hospital that's needed because people have to go to the hospital.
Right.
Our healthcare industry in Massachusetts is driving jobs.
Yeah, absolutely. And Ellen's been phenomenal too. She pushes the shops, like she sends it in her newsletter to all the employees. Great. So thank you, Ellen. We appreciate you.
It's great to promote and support small creative businesses. Absolutely.
That's great. Well, guess what? Yeah. That's it, guys. So before we leave, though, I do also want to say the redo. We did a redo for the Union Common project, not this like the year before as well. So if anybody that's watching has been able to get out to any of the concerts on Union Common, there's absolutely beautiful string lighting that goes across the top. There's benches, picnic tables, and really kind of a facelift for that whole area to support the Union Common concerts. And that was through the redo grant the year before. So we appreciate you giving us those opportunities. We will continue to capitalize on them. We will try to be a little bit more timely with our application, but no promises, but we will get it done. That's for sure. So without further ado, Jason, thank you so much. We really appreciate your time. We would love to have you back again, maybe as a third time at some point in the future. So thank you for joining us. And thank you all for joining us as well. And we look forward to seeing you in September. Believe it or not, September is coming up very quickly for the next episode of Exploring Economic Development with MEDC. Have a great Wednesday, everybody.